How's it going, everybody? My name is Cam White, and welcome back to your favorite weekly horoscope. What the fuck is going on in the universe for March 9th through March 16th of 2020? Thank you so much for being here, watching, liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you. And as you might have been able to tell, I did change my name. I'm not going to be using White Light Astrology anymore. When I first kind of started my YouTube channel, I really didn't know what I was doing. I just kind of I felt like using my name was weird, and so I felt like I needed to make like a label or like a brand. And it served me really good, I used it for a few years, it got me really far, and it's just now time to move on. So I'm just gonna be going by my name, just Cam White, on my YouTube as well. Tomorrow on Monday, I am gonna be launching my new website, and instead of White Light Astrology, you can go to camwhiteastro.com, where you can book a reading. You'll be able to find all of my videos and all of my other content as well. So tomorrow, be sure to check out my website once I launch it. I'm launching it for the full moon in Virgo, as well as Mercury stationing direct. Also on my website, you'll see that there's a Patreon link. My Patreon is still not up and running yet, but that is something that I plan on getting to within the next few weeks. And I just want to thank you guys again for checking out my videos, being here, supporting me through this, past few years. Very much love every single one of you guys, but let's go ahead and get into this week's highlights. This week, starting off just like we ended last week, or began this week with, we have the full moon in Virgo and Mercury stationing direct as we start the week off. And I think that this is gonna help us really get a good, start to the week. Any type of plans that the Mercury retrograde might have messed up, this is gonna be a good time to really go after it, to really handle the situation. And this is a full moon in Virgo that we're talking about. The full moon is what lights things up. This brings up a lot of awareness and ideas around things, and the full moon brings up a lot more energy, and this is all in Virgo. We're talking about what do we need to organize, what do we need to plan. I like how it's Pisces season, and with Pisces season it could be very dreamy, very weird. The full moon in Virgo is where we kind of take off that facade and go, okay, let's write our to-do list, let's make our grocery list, what do we need to really get done. And as well this week, we do also have the sun sextiling Jupiter as one of our highlights. And this isn't going to be not really a big deal at all, and this week really doesn't have too much going on, but I did want to bring up the sun sextiling Jupiter simply because the sun's in Pisces and the sun's in Jupiter's sign while Jupiter is going through Capricorn, and I think that this is going to give a little bit more juice and a little bit more emphasis to Jupiter in Capricorn. Not that it doesn't need any more emphasis or juice, but this is going to be very supportive with the sun in Pisces season where things are a little bit weird and changing. Jupiter is lending out that supportive sextile where it's like, hey, where can we be more constructive? How do we utilize this to our advantage? As well, this week, we end this week, we'll go into next week technically, with Mercury going back into Pisces. So with that being also a highlight, I just want to say Mercury is going to basically be motionless and standing still in Aquarius for this whole week. It'll go direct and then barely start to move forward and dip back into Pisces. And so before Mercury goes back into Pisces, this might be a really good time to, get done whatever you need to get done in your mercurial things. If you have plans to make, or you need to go over your calendar, you need to make appointments, this would be the time to do it. Because as Mercury goes into Pisces, it's not that it won't work or anything like that. It's just more of, it's going to be a lot more confusing, and if you want to run into less errors and run into less frustrating type problems, this is the time to do it. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the horoscope. And once again, we're starting Monday off with that full moon in Virgo and Mercury stationing direct. We've been waiting for this moment for quite some time. And as well, on Monday, we're still going to be having the sun pretty close to a conjunction with Neptune. So I think while this might be kind of a weird time, this might be that one moment where we get a lot of clarity, a lot more focus, and a little bit more of an ambition to handle all of the things that were a little bit confusing rather than kind of putting it off, which can be a little bit easy with the sun being in Pisces. However, with Mars and Capricorn still, there's a lot of work to get done, but it's just still easy. Even if you have a ton of work to do, it's still really easy to put off. So this Monday, this is gonna be a good time to initiate, start anything. If you're wanting to just kind of get your shit together for the rest of March, this is gonna be the time to do it, because the rest of March is looking a little bit weird. But then as we go into Tuesday, that's when we're gonna be having the moon enter Libra. And this is where it's gonna get, this is kind of funny, because after this full moon in Virgo, it's we write down our list of, this is what I need to do, this is what I need to accomplish, this is what I need to get at the grocery store, these are the phone calls I need to make, and all of my appointments. And then the moon goes into Libra, where it's okay, well, I can't do all of that in one day, and well, maybe I could tell someone else to do this. And on Tuesday, the moon just goes into Libra. It doesn't make any aspects just yet. So On Tuesday, this might be a time of kind of, again, Libra is about balance. Libra is about the scales. How can we kind of balance this out a little bit? It's not about pressuring yourself to do everything right now, but getting what you can get done while you can get it done. Just doing things one thing at a time. And while the moon's in Libra, this is having a little bit more grace with it, being a little bit more swift with it, more, rather than rough around the edges, kind of go more with the flow with things. But then we jump into Wednesday on the 11th, and that's when the moon makes that gnarly square to Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto. And this is where I think it gets a little bit interesting. I said earlier, there's not a lot happening this week, but this week just kind of like, it's like one day's chill, one day's intense, the other day's chill, the next day's really intense. And as we go into Wednesday with the moon squaring Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto, this is gonna bring up a lot of tension because this moon in Libra is kind of like, well, I wanna do this and I wanna be able to do that too, but I don't really know. And as it's squaring Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto, it's kind of like, well, you kind of need to focus on this first before you can do the fun stuff. Like, clearly with Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto, all in Capricorn, there's a lot of responsibilities we have to take care of and tend to in this area. And so before we can kind of do anything else that we want to, we're gonna have to put this focus there. So on Wednesday, this might feel a little bit rough, feeling like, you can't do the things that you would rather be doing or that you would enjoy because you have a lot more responsibilities to take over, but just get it out of the way, get it done. And then also on Wednesdays, when we have that sun sextiling Jupiter, which although the moon square might be kind of frustrating, with the sun sextiling Jupiter, I think that this is gonna give us an more open idea of what is possible, of what we can create. I mean, like, we're in Pisces season. Nothing's supposed to be orthodox right now. Things are supposed to just be kind of more naturally flowing, more kind of open to the changes. And Jupiter and Capricorn's kind of going like, hey, how can I use this to my advantage? What is the most realistic way I can do things with this? And that sun sextiling Jupiter is kind of like giving us that ambition to kind of like go with the flow a little bit, kind of take steps as if we have like luck on our side. But then we go into Thursday where the moon technically goes into Scorpio and then makes an opposition to Venus while she's in Taurus. And this is going to be a little bit interesting. Venus and Taurus, when we're talking about value, when we're talking about attraction, the things that we want to connect to, the things that we want to indulge in. Venus is in a fixed sign in her home sign. We're going to get what we want. But the moon in Scorpio is kind of like, do we really need to hold on to that? Do we really need that? Or is that just something that we're telling ourselves that we want? This is going to be kind of a time to go, what's worth holding on to and what's worth letting go of in a sense. And when it comes to Venus and Taurus, I mean, Venus isn't just the only planet that represents love and relationships. It's very much different for all of our charts. But in that, general sense of Venus being about love, romance, and things like that with Venus and Taurus, this is about finding solidity, about finding some value and stable ground and having security in that. Now, the moon opposing Venus during Thursday is going to be kind of like, all right, where is our sense of security going to get brought up where we feel insecure or where we kind of feel like we have to guard or defend ourselves in a little bit? So on Thursday, be careful not to be too defensive or too kind of like uptight. And also don't be afraid to let go of some things that you don't want, but you just haven't convinced yourself that you don't want yet. Then as we get into Friday on the 13th, and I also just realized that it's Friday the 13th. So this is the first Friday the 13th of 2020. Whatever. The moon is still going to be in Scorpio and it's going to sextile Mars, Saturn, Jupiter, Pluto, and whatever the fuck else is in Capricorn. This is kind of like fun depending on how chaotic your energy is. When the moon's in Scorpio, we're kind of reflecting the side of ourselves that's a lot deeper, that's a lot more, inside, it's a lot more hidden away. And this is all sextiling that Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto stuff. So this might be really ambitious energy, really like invested energy into kind of going after this Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto stuff. So, if you've got something that needs to get done with that, I'm thinking Friday is going to be a really good time. We're going to feel very invested. We're going to feel very much ready to dive into that. And then also on Friday, and I didn't make this a highlight, and I don't know if I want to make this a highlight still. I might change it. I don't know. We have Mars sextiling Neptune. Now, this is kind of interesting because while Neptune is in Pisces and things can be kind of confusing up in the air, that's a very general, broad way to put that. Mars in Capricorn is playing by the rules. Mars in Capricorn is doing things by the book, by the employee handbook, and putting in 80 hours a week, taking only 20-minute lunches and X, Y, and Z. But as Mars sextiles Neptune, this idea of visualization, this idea of what can be, what our imagination, our creativity can really come into play with how we execute our plans and how we execute our action. So while we go into Saturday, or this is on Friday, my bad, as we're on Friday the 13th and Mars is sextiling Neptune, this is going to be a time to where, get creative with how you're going to combat this stuff. Don't be afraid to use your imagination and don't be afraid to take action on those imaginative dreams. There are possibilities for something else happening. Not everything has to happen by the book. Some things can get finessed. And if you are a master finesser, you will already know this and I don't have to tell you. But with all this Capricorn stuff and Pisces, Scorpio, you don't always have to play by the rules. You can kind of find the loopholes and contracts here, and you can really be imaginative with how scenarios are going to be playing out. Then we go into Saturday, where the moon is going to enter Sagittarius, and right before it enters Sagittarius, it's going to be making a square to Mercury. So while the moon's in Scorpio, where we're really clear about what we're holding on to, what we're wanting to invest in, what our desires are almost, the moon's going to be square Mercury. And Mercury in Aquarius is like, well, I understand why you have this, reasoning behind wanting these things, but it's just not tangible at the moment. And so you might have to kind of take a load off, kind of relax yourself, because that moon squaring Mercury might be kind of very mentally frustrating when you're diving so hard into something and it's just not working. My advice for that is, don't repeat the same thing over and over again expecting different results. That can be a very easy thing for fixed signs to get into. However, as we go into Saturday, the moon goes into Sagittarius, where this is not necessarily about, what are we deep diving investing into on a subterranean level, but on a outwardly level. What are we wanting to expand into? What are we wanting to understand more of? What are we wanting to learn and what are we wanting to grow into? And as that moon goes into Sagittarius on Saturday, I think that this is going to make the weekend a lot more exciting and a lot more enjoyable. And of course, as we go into Sunday, the moon's still going to be in Sagittarius now, making a square to Neptune. And this is, with all of these dreams that we have and the things that we want to visualize, the things that we want to see, the things that we understand, there is confusion with that, where we can, idealize so many parts of our lives and we could go, oh, this is going to be great. This is how I feel about things. This is where I'm going. But as the moon squares Neptune, this is going to be a time where, be creative, be imaginative, but don't let that get the best of you. It's about knowing what is actually out there and what you'll actually run into. If you're packing your bags for a weekend camping trip, yeah, you could potentially run into Bigfoot, but are you? So why would you pack, all of these things that you would normally pack if you were going to run into Bigfoot? Instead of creating up scenarios of things that might actually happen, let's just focus on the things that are more realistic to happen and pack your bag for those things. Then we get into Monday, and on Monday, that's when we're going to be having Mercury go back into Pisces. And like I said earlier, or like I said a few weeks ago when I did that Mercury retrograde video, Mercury in Pisces, it's not about being black and white in detail. It's about being more imaginative, more creative, more visual. And so while Mercury goes back into Pisces during this time, it can be really hard to get things kind of correct or very clear in black and white when Mercury's in Pisces, but that's what that retrograde was for. We went into Mercury in Pisces, we saw what we needed to see, Mercury goes back into Aquarius, we're kind of able to remember as much as we can. It's kind of like going to, let's say you went to the Galapagos Islands to go vacation, but for whatever reason they weren't allowed to have photos. Mercury in Pisces is like memorizing everything that you can see, and then when Mercury goes back into Aquarius, when you go back to your hotel room, you try to draw it as best to your imagination as you can. And that's kind of like the idea here of, you can't take a photo of this. You can't remember all of the details. So try to remember as hard as you can, get all of the visuals, and then write it down when you've got time. And that's this week with Mercury in Aquarius. But now that Mercury is going to be going back into Pisces, this is the time where, again, we're going to go out on vacation again, and there's going to be no cameras. There's going to be no way to record any of this. So take it all in. Let yourself enjoy it. Be creative. Be, flow with, essentially. And then as well on Monday, we're going to be having the moon go into Capricorn, where I don't think this is the first transit, but maybe the second. I don't remember, but we're going to have the moon, the south node, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto, all in Capricorn as we start next week. So next week's pretty serious, but also this week has been very imaginative, very much like, one day we're feeling good, next day it's intense, one day we're feeling good, next day is intense. Next week is pretty intense. Next week we've got the sun ingressing into Aries and we have the spring equinox, hallelujah, and then we have Mars conjoining Jupiter to start off the equinox with, as if that's not super crazy. We have Saturn ingressing into Aquarius next week. Yeah, we're already at Saturn entering Aquarius, so buckle up. And we also have Mars conjoining Pluto, and we have the new moon in Aries next week. So if you haven't been feeling that Mars energy, next week is very much Mars week. I'm actually going to call next week the week of malefics, because next week is all about being malefic. And I don't want to make that like, oh, that's bad, but like shit's going to get, the past couple weeks have been almost like a rom-com, fantasy animation movie. Next week is like Kill Bill. Like, it's about to go down. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for being here, liking, sharing, commenting, subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you guys, and I'll be seeing you next week.